But people with anxiety, and especially OCD, seem to be addicted to the mind screen. They think they need to think to be able to function, okay? And that all the thoughts need to be considered as true and acted upon or analysed to find out why they're there and what they mean. And to me, one of the biggest surprises that I found as I escaped anxiety and as I escaped my OCD was that, for the most part, I don't need to think. I just instinctively or intuitively know what I should do, okay? And how could I know what will happen based on what I do? I just need to do it and see what happens. I laugh. And most of my thinking was just running stories, dwelling on the past, or fearful stories about the future, or beating myself up for not being who I was conditioned to expect myself to be. The goal is to keep the mind screen as free and as uncluttered as possible by focusing on the silent screen upon which the thoughts are projected, but not the thoughts themselves. Unless you're in a situation where you do actually need to think, like reading a map, doing some mathematics, or planning something. So, let me share with you another of my theories about the mind screen. Some complex thinkers, okay, or those with OCD, seem to have a see-through mind screen. What I mean is, not only can they see what's thoughts are presented up from the unconscious mind to be displayed on the mind screen, but they can also see through the screen as if it was clear glass into the workings of the unconscious below, which is a place that they shouldn't have access to. I'll say that again. It's as if the conscious mind can see through the mind screen into the workings of the unconscious mind, which is not a place that the conscious mind should be looking into. I think the unconscious brain works a little like this. A problem or a situation arises, like what's that noise downstairs? Then in a millisecond or two, the unconscious brain runs through every scenario it can possibly imagine, whilst pattern matching to the safe and unsafe databases of the amygdala. Okay, you might say that at one end of the scale imagines a burglar coming in who might try to kill you, and on the other end of the scale we might say, well, maybe it's just the cat coming through the cat flap, or it's noise from the dishwasher. The unconscious brain then evaluates all of those options, okay, and how you might best respond, then projects its well-considered conclusion to the mind screen, okay, and perhaps it posts a thought that says, there's a noise downstairs, but it's okay, it's probably the cat, why don't you quickly go down and check to see if Moggy is okay? But what if you have an OCD mind that allows you to consciously observe and see all these unconscious brain's workings? You might be thinking, why did my brain think there was a person in my house? Why is my brain saying it's only the cat when it could be a murderer? Okay? Can you see that you weren't supposed to see all the workings of the brain? It was just the unconscious brain running every scenario it possibly could, good and bad, trying to offer you the best and most likely solution just in a matter of seconds. This is just how evolutionary we were designed to be, okay? And I think this particular brain matching perspective points towards the source of psychosis, or even schizophrenia, which is the inability to distinguish between reality and imagination, thus making the person unable to ground themselves. It reminds me a bit like the movie Perception, where the characters had that little spinning top that was their definitive link back to reality. And as they explored deeper and deeper down into the pseudo-reality of their brain's thoughts, their memories, other dimensions, other lifetimes, okay? That's the only way they could ground themselves back to see if their dreams were true or just a story in their mind. I hope this makes a little bit of sense. I don't see schizophrenia as a disease. I see it as a condition that evolves over time in the brains of clever individuals with potent imaginations who were never taught clever grounding concepts to manage in all their creativity, and they often don't have a constructive outlet for all that energetic imagination, so it's turned inwards and it's used upon themselves. I think also, to make it worse, they're given drugs to manage their fears, which further skew the very reality that they are desperately to ground themselves within. As you know, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just sharing with you the ideas that surprisingly arise on my mind screen. Okay, my initial education was in engineering, in maths and physics. Okay, but as I learned about the brain from psychologists, I saw things, many things, very, very, very differently from the way they did. They were saying that psychology was the scientific study of the brain, which included conscious and unconscious thoughts and feelings. But I could only ever see this as a pseudoscience. How did they know what was going on inside my head? How could they prove what a dream was, where it came from, if it was true or not? How can you prove what reality is when the thing that's doing the proving, the brain, sits in the darkness of the skull, taking inputs from our senses, which we know to be fallible and trickable, as I described in video 17. To me, we're all psychotic, but that's okay. We flip between our inner worlds, which is real, and the outer world, which is different, but also real. And the degree with which we can flexibly handle this to-in and fro-in, okay, and feel comfortable being out of control, and to be comfortable not knowing, is the degree that we will be less psychotic, and we might call that calmness. Now, a person with complex anxiety or OCD, they tend to be chasing answers to fictitious questions from the brain's imagination, which they shouldn't be seeing, which lead to doubt, fear, and the inability to trust themselves or others. And I've told this to many people, and so many have said to me, John, just knowing this is so freeing. It's just so releasing, just to have a model to see what's really happening to me. As I said in an earlier video, if you were Stephen King, the horror book writer, and you had unrequested thoughts about rape, murder, clowns, evil demons, you'd say, wow, what a creative mind I have. Let me turn my imaginations into a book. And he wouldn't believe any of it. He just says, I got a creative mind. How lucky am I? How cool is that? But a person with OCD might say, oh, what if I was to do those things? I must be a bad person for having those thoughts, okay? Oh my God, what's wrong with me? I better stay away from people in case I act on any of those things. These are two very different perspectives, and only one of them is useful for a calm and happy life. So my advice, if you are an overthinker and are seemingly consciously peering into the workings of the unconscious mind through this see-through mind screen, I would say to you, stop trying to answer those questions about a content that you're not supposed to see. And can you imagine that there's a little button or a little lever that allows you to adjust the opaqueness of the screen to make it solid, okay? So that you don't need to see or analyze the inner workings of the brain. These are just automated processes, and you can begin to trust it, but you don't need to believe it. Okay, once again, I hope this is making sense. You may need to go around a couple of times. Okay, we're near the end now. So in this final part of this video, I would like to expand my mind screen metaphor one more time by adding two new concepts.